Chaka, welcome to my podcast and thank you for doing this all the way from London.
More than welcome. Pleasure to be here. As always, to see your smiley face. Ask me anything you want.
Superb. So Chaka, my first question goes straight into, typically in advertising, right? The dream for most of us is that one day we'll make a movie or one day we'll make a something for Netflix, right? The direction is the reverse, that advertising creative directors want to become directors one day, and your flow's been the other side, right? And you've been very, very successful at the television and the production side, and then you've joined advertising, right? So what got you here, and are you still excited about being here? I mean, so
right? Can you imagine if I said no? That would be a terrible start, wouldn't it? So yeah, it is. I realize it's not unusual for me because I don't know anything different. But I realize, obviously, coming into this side of the sort of creative industry, the flow of traffic is usually the other way, of people wanting to get into production and as you said, getting into telly. To be honest, I've never had a master plan, for my career or for my life. I've just done things that I am really interested in and I'm really passionate about. And I've been very lucky, very, very lucky to meet people who've sort of opened doors. And to be honest, without sounding trite, I've just followed people and opportunities because that's where you're going to learn the most and hopefully get better and do more of the stuff that you like. And the key thing for me leaving college was about making. I wanted to make. I didn't know anything about advertising, so it's really interesting for me when we have conversations about D&I and how we're trying to engage young people. When I was coming out of college, I didn't even think about a career in advertising. I didn't even know what a career in advertising was. I wouldn't have heard of it. But yet I was intensely creative and I wrote and I wanted to direct, but I never. So it's interesting. And this is, 20 years ago, let alone now. I mean, I don't know if it's really moved on that much. But anyway, so the key thing for me was making. Where could I go and make and physically make? And I wanted to direct. That was sort of pretty much the only thing I wanted to do as a kid. Passionately, like those things where you think, if I can't do it, I just don't know what else I'll be able to do, because it is just the holy grail. It's such a dream. So I sort of busted an ass trying to, with no connections or no sort of family. We didn't come from a family that was connected to anything in the creative industry. My mum was a chemical engineer, so unless I wanted to go and work for an oil company, frankly, I was fucked. Excuse my language. Am I allowed to swear, by the way?
Of course. This is the advertising podcast.
Fantastic. Okay, thank goodness. Otherwise, I'd be in real trouble. So anyway, so I went into production. I started directing and directing very low key stuff, obviously, as you do when you're a kid. Like very, very, very low budget music videos, very low budget kind of pilots for sketch shows and stuff like that. Because comedy is really important to me. And when it's not even looking back, it's still true for me now. I can't. It's like being a chef in a kitchen. I need to be in the kitchen as well. I can't just stand in front of house and just talk to guests. I like playing with the food. That's part of the fun of it for me. It's not part of the fun of it, it's all of it. It's the thing that sort of gives you butterflies in your stomach. And what's been incredible is learning so many other things apart from just the production side. So bit by bit. And I think what I've realized as I've got older is that I don't think I get bored easily, but I just don't want to do the same thing over and over again. I have massive respect for people who can do the same job, for like 20, 30 years, but I think I might go a bit bananas. So it's you can have the same job, but it's what are you sort of developing and what are you growing? What are the new skills? What are the things that you don't really understand and that kind of make you kind of scratch your head and actually get a bit nervous about? I like that. I really like that adrenaline when you look at something like, what the bloody, how the hell do we do that? And that for me is sort of it's the heart of creativity, is looking at problems and kind of going, right, or how do we solve that with creativity, really?
Yeah, and being able to see your work out there and see, wow, we did manage a bit of an impact, right? I think that's what we all live for, right? And part of the reason, for example, I never shifted to the client side was that I would die just thinking about one thing all day. I just can't do that. I love the fact that we jump from one thing to the other, in 30-minute slots.
I think it's a really good point. I think we're probably a little bit schizophrenic by nature in the fact that we I don't know if that's an appropriate word, so apologies if it isn't, but it's our, I think, our want to again, back to, I keep making food analogies. I'm obviously hungry, it's lunchtime over here. It's like you want to taste lots of different things all the time and not just eat, I love chicken, but I don't want to eat chicken all the time. I want to have I want to have dessert, I want to have coffee, I want to have all these lovely things. And particularly when you come across a new flavor, oh my God, it's like your head gets blown. It's like amazing. So I completely agree. I imagine it's probably a thread in all of us creative folk is the sort of need to do lots of different things, right?
Yeah. I mean, that segues, Chaka, to the other question, which is, what really is creativity today, right? I mean, in India, for example, Raj and I, we're always talking about innovation. We're talking about technology. We're talking about what's the new piece that we are inventing, right? So we are playing with technology, data, real gadgets, and so on and so forth. At the same time, some gentlemen would stand up and say, forget all this. It's all about persuasion. It's about the words and the language.
Yeah.
Like, no, but really, that's not what we want to do here, right? So there's in the industry, there's a bit of a polarization, right? That finally it's about words, images, one piece of ad, and so on and so forth, which is not wrong, because if you run an agency our size, we do a lot of that ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But our real joy really comes from inventing something, playing with newer materials, data, technology, products, innovation, doing packaging in a new way. So what's your take on where is creativity right now?
Well, I think it's everything you just said. You just answered it for me. It's brilliant. I don't even need to say a thing. I think it's all of those things. I think sometimes as an industry, as people, we can get into a very kind of reductive sort of sense of being, where things have to be taken away and a new thing gets put on top, as if that's the way creativity works. And I don't think it is reductive. I think it's additive. I think it, through time, through the annals of time, the fascinating, exciting wonder of creativity is how it moves and grows and adapts to culture around it, to advancements, whether that be industrial, whether that be technology, whatever it is. They're just other ways to be able to create. And most importantly, the one thread that runs through all of it, whether it is a piece of copy, whether it's a new piece of tech or a bit of product innovation, ultimately, the goal is the same, which is to forge a connection and a relationship with someone, with people. That's it. And I say that's it as if it's a really easy thing. It bloody isn't, as you and I know. That's the thing that we bust an ass over every single day, is to create something meaningful. And so tech in and of itself, or data in and of itself, means fuck all, frankly. The iPhone as a we've all got these things, fabulous as they are. In and of itself, I don't care about the tech of the iPhone. What I'm excited about is what it does for my life. What does it enable me to do? What new doors does it open for me? I still, every time I pay for something on my iWatch, I'm still amazed. I'm like, this is insane. I'm just flashing my watch over something and I've managed to purchase it. This is amazing. I don't even carry money around anymore. The fact that I can, my kid has started high school, and I can watch where she is as she's coming home. Oh my God, it's changed. These small things, they're not small things. They are huge. But I think what it has done, so I don't disagree with people who say it's about persuasion. Of course it's about persuasion, but it's also about embracing all the new ways in which we can communicate. Persuasion is no longer talking at people. It hasn't been for over a decade and longer than that. It's not even consumers, audiences are savvy and they're in the driving seat. So we are in service of them, as are our brands, and we have to turn up in a meaningful way, and we have to be of use. And if we're not, people will not give us, literally will give us none of their time, and nor should they. And we're consumers, we're audience members, honey, and we're exactly the same. If something keeps popping up annoyingly and isn't of any benefit to me, I'm like, bugger off. I don't care. I don't want to engage with you as a brand or as a person or as anything. So I think your very eloquent beginning to this sort of question was, you summed it up. It's all of that. And I don't think it's about, I think sometimes this industry is guilty of lurching towards the next new thing, as if that's the answer. And there is no such thing as the answer. The answer is in all of it. And the answer is in different ingredients being put together Who are the audiences that you want? Where are they? How do you want to speak to them? How do they need to be spoken to? How are you turning up in a meaningful way for them? And are you being of any benefit to their life? And if you can answer those things, whether it's a piece of copy, whether it's a new piece of tech, then you've got a chance of creating some kind of connection.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's what makes this industry so fascinating. I mean, if anybody asks me today, I tell them this is the best time to be here because there's so many things you can do now. So as you're saying, these are very many ways of reaching at the same place, just that the instruments, the materials have changed multifold. We have much more to paint with now and play with.
100%. I mean, I think it's the same with, you look at any form of creativity, whether it's art or whether it's music, 30 years ago, what you could do in a studio, what instruments you could play, how you could put them together, how you could mix them. You didn't have sampling, you didn't have any effects, etc., etc. Technology didn't take away the need and the art to be able to play the guitar really bloody well. What it did was to be able to bring in other tools so that musicians could bring different types of music to life, different styles, different tones, all with the same intent, which is connecting emotionally with people, with listeners. That's the same thing, whether it was from the Beatles then or whether it's Billie Eilish now. It's still the same bloody intent. Of course, their music is worlds apart. And I think you're right. I think it's a bloody exciting time. And not only is it an exciting time, the thing that I love is that it's never going to go back to, thank God, to a time where there's a norm that doesn't change. It's changing all the time. That's the exciting part. And that's not scary. It's not like you have to keep up and be the master of all those things. No, there are masters and mistresses in all of those new innovations that are coming up. And tapping into that and working with those people is, I think, the most exciting part, really.
Yeah. And we've had a lot of joy, for example, working with scientists or psychology analysts and the depth which they're going into the domain. I wanted to discuss a bit, Chaka, with you on the creative process itself, right? And our process, for example, Leo Burnett is a madhouse, right? We like all heads in the bucket, and we are all very, very collaborative, and everybody has to think of ideas and so on and so forth. So it's huge radical collaboration, right? But there's also a thinking which says, yes, it is radical collaboration, and then there has to be radical uncollaboration, because then somebody has to go out there and put their craft at it. I mean, whatever that craft might be. It could be design, it could be writing, it could be filmmaking. So radical collaboration and radical uncollaboration, or is there another way, the way it works better? What are your thoughts on that, Chaka?
Well, I don't think there's one definitive way. I think that's the most important thing. I think those rhythms are created when you get a group of people and there's a chemistry and an alchemy between them, and you sort of figure it out. It's like football teams, not all football teams play the same. There's a different energy, there's a different rhythm to it and a different understanding. But the key to it is that those 11 players are connected on that field. So I think of it in the same way when I think of the creative process, that it's a group of people who are coming together, who are collaborating to basically to give birth to a baby, you know what I mean? To create this thing from scratch, and they're all equally as invested. But I think you make a very good point that at the end of the day, you can't have too many cooks. You can't have, 100 people getting together and thinking that you're going to move something on. There has to be enough room. And I think this is the perennial challenge for creative people, and for all, when I say creative people, I mean all of the people in our agencies, because it's not just the creatives who are creative. I mean every single person, is this balance of feeling you have a place at the table 1000%, and you have a point of view and you have an opinion that you can air, but at the same time knowing whose discipline and skill and craft is what, so that when it gets to a certain point, those people can take the lead. And that's always an interesting sort of push and pull. And I think when it gets to that stage, personally for me, I think you have to give autonomy to people to be able to make the decisions that they need to. And you can't do it by committee, because it's a bugger's muddle and nothing will get done. And actually, I think a really good example of that, and something that I hope has really helped me, is actually my experiences in production. When you're directing, you obviously have a vision and you have a thought in terms of the story that you're trying to tell them, or whatever it is, and how you want to pull that together. But you are not the sole person in that endeavor. It is every single person on that crew, from your gaffer, your grip, your DOP, all the way through to catering. You know, the people who feed you every day are equally as important, and they have ownership of the thing that you are collectively creating. But in that, what's brilliant is every single minute of the day, you are talking collectively together. But there is a natural understanding that everyone has to go away and do their bits. So I don't want to interfere with the gaffer. I don't want to talk about lighting. I tell, okay, let's talk about this, what we want it to look like. Then you go off and you create that. The DOP, this is the mood that we're trying to create. These are the kind of shots we're trying to, okay, great. Now you go and figure out what lenses and how we're going to shoot that. You know, there's a very natural rhythm to it, which I think when it works best, and you're right, it's chaos and it's delicious, glorious, messy chaos, but there's also some order in it and a natural order in it. And I think when you work with people that you trust, and trust is massively important, you know when you can, well, hopefully you can speak up the entire time, but when are the moments to chime in, give your opinion, and then pull out and let people take the lead in different places.
Yeah. No, trust is all about it, right? I mean, I was talking to Adam Morgan, and he mentioned something very interesting, that the entire training of Navy SEALs is not so much about the skills. It's about the trust. It's about when you're out there, does your buddy have your back?
100%. 100%. Oh my God, are you comparing us to the SAS? Jesus.
Yeah. Adam Morgan did that. Adam Morgan did that. Superb. Shifting gears a bit, Chaka, right? You're on the platforms on many of these, Facebook's EMA Creative Council, Snapchat's Global Creative Council, a speaker at Google Rare, right? In a time when advertising and a lot of us are comparing ourselves to this whole influencer game and platform game, and somebody yesterday tweeted, I forget who, thankfully I forgot, that agencies will be gone, and entire creativity will happen with influencers and so on and so forth. It's the classical advertising is dead kind of a headline which people love to put out. Right. So, but there is a bit of a push and pull there on saying that would advertising be as sexy as some of the influencers are, or is it all friendly and not frenemies? So what's your view on creativity with the platforms? What's your view on creativity in the world where influencers are probably as good, if not better, many times than the product that we put out?
Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, in the fact that I suppose the shape and face of creativity in the modern world and influencers and online platforms is obviously still a relatively new phenomena of kind of the last 10 years. And we've seen it. I've been fascinated by it because I was a grown up from the beginning of it. I wasn't a kid going into sort of things like YouTube and Facebook, and seeing where Facebook starts to lag down and then Insta starts taking for different audiences, and it starts to fragment in the right way as there's more choice, etc., and people can be more selective. I think that as I said, I think it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, which is the key is that we have a much bigger playground in which to play in. So no longer is it, and thank God it's not just telly or radio, out of home. All three channels, by the way, which I love and I still think are incredibly important, but they are now just part of a much, much bigger landscape. So that title bores the hell out of me when people are advertising is dead. Shut up. It's just so boring and unoriginal. It's dead if it doesn't acknowledge that the world has changed and doesn't understand how to connect with people, because that's ultimately our role. We do that on behalf of our brands. We are building dialogues between brands and people and relationships. So obviously, if we just think that it's the way it was 20 years ago, we'll be dead in the water. But I don't know anyone that I work with or even in this industry who thinks that. So that's ridiculous. And I think also this goes back to the thing of not necessarily reductive or additive, but this idea of better or worse. Like, this channel is better, influencers are better. No, it's this platform that's better. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Who are you trying to talk to? Is that the right platform, the right space for you to be able to speak to those people? If it is, understand it properly, authentically, and you will be able to create dialogue. I think where some brands can go wrong is they look at a platform, it looks very, very attractive. And sometimes there can be a sense that you can just sort of buy your way into it. And you can't. You have to understand, the whole point of influencers, as we know, it's a bit different now, but I remember at the beginning, that original generation, there was a real honor about what they would back and what they wouldn't back, because they knew that their relationship with their audiences, in their millions, obviously, as we know, was more important, and that their audience would be able to sniff bullshit. So if they were just promoting stuff that they didn't believe in and wasn't true to who they were authentically and their brand, then frankly, their audience would have turned around and gone like, you know what, you're not for me. You're trying to sell me shit. You're not there for my benefit. I think it's changed a little bit more. I think, look at TikTok, for goodness sake. We are so aware when we're being sold something, and you kind of go like, okay, you know what, cool. I like you as an influencer. You're going to use this moment to sell me some shit. Fine, cool. Actually, I like the rest of your content. So it's changing again.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to the fact that it will keep changing. There will not be one world order. And we've just got to keep being reactive to that and understanding it, properly understanding it. So I don't think there is better or worse. I don't think that all brands need to be on all platforms. I think you have to understand who you are and where you need to turn up. And then when you turn up, make sure, for God's sake, that you're being authentic and that you understand that platform and you understand those audiences.
Yeah, I love that analogy. You're saying it's and it's not or, right? It's just more on the platter. It's like how Indian food is like a thali, right? I mean, a little bit of everything on that, and take your pick, right? It's crunchy and sour and salty, all
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And it's not all for everyone. You don't have to be doing all of it. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when, right at the very beginning, when, it was Bebo and God knows all these, they came and went, and people sort of go, oh my God, what should we do? What's our strategy for that? And you're like, well, why would you be on that? You don't need to be on that. That's got nothing to do with you. That's not them not being progressive. Maybe they need to go into other spaces. Maybe it's experiential. Maybe it's through activations. Who the hell knows? But I think if you come, instead of sort of, again, this idea of like, there's an answer or like, a silver bullet, that's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. I start with the truth of your brand, and then, and who you are and what you stand for. And then from there, you go outwards from that and figure out where you need to be. Again, it's not rocket science.
Yeah. Chaka, let's talk about humankind a bit, right? I mean, we're a humankind agency, and I mean, it's very close to my heart, and we love. You see a humankind idea, like, yes, it is. I mean, there's never a debate in the room when there's an 8-ball idea, right? I mean, I've been in the room so many times. If it's an 8-ball, there's never a debate, right? I mean, everybody is saying yes. I mean, the guys who were so cynical right in the morning would be like, yes, it is, right? Now, of course, so there's purpose and there's humankind at one end, but there's also a lot of woke washing, right? It almost looks like we've got ourselves a formula, right? I mean, pick this, put this, and here you have a case study video material stuff. And brands are kind of getting into territories that they have very little to do with at times, and then saying that, so how do we navigate this? I mean, how do we navigate the idea of purpose? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it sort of links to what I was just talking about a bit earlier, to be honest, which is all about authenticity. And I think our job is to help keep our brands honest, and for them not to panic and think, oh my goodness, everyone has a purpose. We need to have one. What's the hot topic right now? Let's jump on that. It's not about that, because again, people sniff out bullshit. They know whether you're sincere about that, and it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have had a history in supporting a certain issue or certain politics, not at all. But when you start preaching, or not preaching is the wrong word, when you start backing or start supporting a certain cause or a certain purpose, then that has to live through your organization, through every single touch point. And it has to become a reality. It can't be a strategic strand that is, oh, this is our purpose strategy. Well, that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? It can't just be in communications. It has to be embedded in the organization. It can't just be in communications. It has to be in acts. What are you actually doing? How are you turning up? How visible is it? And what is the real, and I think this is the thing ultimately that people judge, audiences judge, is your intent. What is your intent? Are you trying to score brownie points to appear liberal or to appear however you are trying to be perceived? Or do you genuinely believe there is a problem of significance in the world that you as a brand could help in some way? And if you come from that, which comes from ultimately, we talked about humankind, comes from heart, and it comes from love. And that's obviously the strongest thing in the world. That's ultimately what humankind is about. And what Leo's is about is love. We love, and we want those ideas are, I don't want to sound so saccharine, but they are put into the world with love. And the reaction to it, you hope, again, is love, not just like, but love, to make you feel something. We want to make people feel something. So to feel that, you have to, again, it goes back to trust. You've got to trust someone. And you've got to trust what they're saying, and you've got to trust the fact that they're not just doing it for that year, that they're properly going to invest in it and it becomes part of their business. You know, I mean, the obvious one is Patagonia. You know what Patagonia stands for. They're not just doing that. They weren't doing that just on the bandwagon of suddenly, you know, oh my goodness, you know, we need to take care of the planet. They were formed from that. And like I said, you know, your origin doesn't have to be that. You can take on a cause or a purpose or something that you believe in, but it has to ring true. It has to be part of your business. And by the way, I think the other thing about purpose is it doesn't always have to be serious. You know, Disney's purpose is about creating smiles. That is equally as important. They are there to lift our souls. So sometimes I think in those conversations with our clients, we should be counseling them and helping them and guiding them to understand it's not just about, right, what's the latest political thing that you can get behind, or kind of global cause or cultural cause. It might be something that's fundamentally true to your DNA in the space of entertainment, for example, or joy. Bloody brilliant. But then let's go to town. And again, don't just do that in your communications. How are you living up to that? Start turning up so that people start believing you.
Yeah, it's about being invested, as you're saying, right? Some great work, right? Absolutely fantastic work. Like, oh fuck, I wish I had done that kind of work. Coming out of UKLB on McDonald's, right? And half the time,
Thanks,
how did you sell this, right? So obviously, one is obviously creating the work, and I'd like to pick your mind on how do you sell this kind of work? I mean, just take us through some tips. How do you sell this kind of work? What went behind some of this absolutely awesome, brave work? I mean, how did they sign off?
So I think, I'm going to give an answer that is, I'm not sure how helpful it's going to be, because it's one of those things that you sort of dream of. The reason we get to the work that we get to on Macca's in the UK is 100% down to obviously the brilliantly talented people that we have internally and also client side, but most importantly, it's down to a 37-year-long relationship, and this relationship is absolutely wonderful. I genuinely am not kidding. I'm not trying to sound gushy or brown nosy. I love my Macca's clients. I mean, I genuinely love them. They are brilliant, decent human beings. There is a great culture over there as a business. We are partners with them. We have complete trust. And as a result of that, we can have really honest conversations. And we say what we need to say. It's done with respect and love. And sometimes we convince them of certain things, and sometimes they say no, and they convince us of their point of view. But what it isn't, and funny enough, it's that word is sometimes so loaded, this sort of thing of selling an idea. Hopefully ideas sell themselves. And all you're doing is sort of presenting it to people in a way to kind of be able to push on their brand and their brand story and obviously their business. And that's at the heart of it. And I know that sounds very sentimental, but genuinely, our teams are 200% invested in the brand. They are 200% invested in the people that they work with over there. And there is trust, so that sometimes when we're pushing on an idea and they're like, maybe I'm not sure about this, they will take the leap of faith and let us go there. And what's wonderful about that, not only is the ability to trust and to take that leap of faith, but also that if it doesn't work out, there's no blame. It's a collective decision. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So there isn't this crazy, like, we're the agency and you're the client. I hate those terms. We're a team. We're a bloody team. And we all want McDonald's to be successful. And they are incredibly respectful of creativity. They are very, 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 very good creative marketeers. And that's not a given always. So again, we're incredibly lucky, but also they train their people really, really well. And likewise, our side. So the wonderful creative directors on our McDonald's account, Andy and James, who you've met, are just fantastic. The whole team, Layla, Sam, Mark, everyone who works on the account and who works on the account over the agency loves the brand. We just love the brand. We love the people and we love the brand. So I think that when you genuinely love the brands that you work for, takes you to a different place when you're creating. I just think it does naturally. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what it's like? If you're cooking food for your family, the food will be more delicious than if you are cooking food for strangers.
Oh, that's
right?
so lovely. That's so lovely. Yeah. You're so right.
But you know, it's so weird, and you can't explain why. It's the same recipe.
Yeah.
But the difference is you've put love and heart into that recipe. It's like the unknown goes into it. And when you taste it, it's like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I think that's kind of where we're at with Macca's and have been for decades. And it gets stronger and stronger. And of course, like any relationship, stuff comes up. But like I said, because we've got trust and respect, we can talk about it and we sort it out.
Yeah. No, this is awesome. So you're saying it finally boils down to relationship and love and passion for the brand and the business.
100%.
It's
100%. Because otherwise, honey, I think then exactly to your point, the question itself, I think otherwise you're selling to someone.
Yeah.
And selling to someone.
It's me versus you. It's divide.
Spot on. Yes. 100%. Yes. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to change someone's mind. Well, you don't need to change someone's mind. Hopefully they see something and they're equally as excited. Now they might have worries. Yeah. And then that's our job, is to kind of allay those worries. But I don't want to be selling something to someone who doesn't. That's like asking someone to go out with you who doesn't want to go out with you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, please be my boyfriend. Please be my girlfriend. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, do you like me? Do you want to hang out? Like, cool, let's do this. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's just a different dynamic.
Yeah. When it's two-way and not just one way.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Chaka, you've like played multiple roles, right? You've been a director, writer, visualizer, jury, and now CCO for Leo Burnett, right? I mean, globally, and we have such an amazing culture, right? I mean, one thing which stands out for us is that it's just a bunch of people, the camaraderie, the culture. So what's going on in your mind now? I mean, having played all these roles, what's going on in your mind with respect to Leo Burnett, global CCO? Is that a lot? I mean, how are you navigating this piece?
Well, first and foremost, it's a bloody great honor. So that's the starting point. Like, Jesus Christ, look at the people who've gone before. That's just ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, I'm woefully underqualified in comparison to them. They're titans. So the first point is I'm chuffed to bits and genuinely very sort of humbled by it. And I take it very seriously that I've been lucky enough to sort of been given a bit of permission to just sort of hopefully help our family. And I see it as family. So, and maybe this is also from not coming from sort of an advertising background, that, you know, words like network for me are to do with sort of broadcasters, you know, like there's a broadcasting network or something, which is lovely, by the way. But I've always thought of it as the Leo Burnett family. And the great thing about family is, as we know, is that, and this is the GPC every time, is that you might not see each other for 4 or 5 months, but the minute you're in that room, you just love each other all over again. Yeah. And something, and I remember this from my first GPC in London with Mark, with Tuts. Yeah. Genuinely, again, the feeling, the love in the room was quite something. Genuinely, the respect and the feeling that everyone had for each other, just looking out for each other. They wanted to make the work better. You know, any conversation, the debate was never personal. It was, frankly, look, this is what it came down to. There were no arseholes in the room. There genuinely were no arseholes. There were people who were fundamentally kind, had generosity of spirit, and literally had creativity oozing out of every single pore. So, and I don't think that's changed in our global family. I think we have some stunningly talented people around the globe, stunningly talented. I think this is a time for us to get a little bit of our confidence back.
Yeah.
I think the world has been crazy. I think the advertising world has been crazy. There's been so many changes. And when there's so many changes, I think that can sometimes be a bit destabilizing, you know, and you sort of look around, are we as relevant? Are we? Yes, we are. We are not. If we are not, just because we have a heritage does not make us traditional and boring and one note. We don't want to make one type of work. We want creative ideas that live in the world, that genuinely touch people and move people in any way, through whichever medium. Now, whether that's a beautifully crafted 60-second film, wonderful. Whether that's through activation, whether that's through product, whether that's through innovation, through design, whatever the hell it's through. We're not interested in the medium per se. We are in its craft, and we'll always be brilliant in that. But that's just it's a lie to think that we are not that. But I think we can start talking about it and shouting about it a little bit louder. Now, that said, we've got to have the work to back that up. You can't just say those things. You've got to have the work to back it up. But to get to that work, you've got to have confidence. And to have confidence, you've got to remember how brilliant you are. And you've got to remember that you're part of a family. Remember what we're about. I think, again, we all know it. The minute you speak to another Burnetta, you can feel it straight away.
Yeah.
But I think we need to articulate it a little bit, not in a complicated way. I'm a very simple girl. I don't like reams and reams of stuff. Otherwise I get confused. So what we're looking at the minute is a little bit of a tightening, I suppose, of like just bringing back out to the world, like, this is who Leos are. Not overcomplicated, always confidently humble. We always have a humility, but I think we need that confidence back. We need to push our shoulders back a little bit and go, do you know what? We can do fucking great things. So let's go out and do fucking great things in the world. And that will breed more confidence, better work. It's just cyclical. And most importantly, we'll have the best time doing it, because that is also in our culture. We love to laugh. We love to be together with people. We take our roles very seriously. We take our jobs very seriously. We don't take ourselves very seriously. We're down to earth. We all know this. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but that's been my observations. I've been in this job now for about 14 weeks. I think, again, we talked about humankind, a little tightening up of what that means and how we show up in the world. And not saying everyone has to use that. No, you don't have to use it at all. But it's sort of like our starting point. Do you know what I mean? And then for each market, you can adapt it however you like. That's your call. You know your market. Excuse me. You know how Leo's needs to turn up there. So change the language, change whatever you want to. That's your call entirely. Again, back to autonomy. But let's sort of not remember, but let's strengthen those connections that we have. Let's strengthen the family again. We're a strong family, and that's really, really difficult, as you know, that takes decades to build, and we've got it. I think we've just been a bit quiet. I think we need to hear the lion roar a bit more. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, that's so simple, and what I like about it's just so organic, right? It's not. It looks very unrehearsed. I mean, a couple of things we talk so much about in India, Chaka, is the whole idea of swagger, right? So we're like, we are the ones who create stuff, right? We are the ones who build brands. We can create something from nothing, right? So we got to have that swagger. We have to have that camaraderie, standing up for each other. And those are two things that I'm so proud of, having been through the last 18 months, right? Because that's what has really kept us afloat.
Yeah, 100%. And you can't buy that. You cannot buy that. You cannot employ it. You cannot buy it. It's there. And it's through a collection of people and that chemistry and that love. And we've got that. And I think when we start seeing what a superpower we have within, we're sitting on it. You know what I mean? We just got to start using it a little bit more. And like I said, being a bit louder about it. And we've got to be louder about it. Like I said, I have very little time to sort of intellectual debate around slogans and stuff like that, and like, oh, with this or with that or the other. It comes to life through the work, and it comes to life through the people, and that's all I give a shit about, to be honest.
Oh, that's fantastic. On the young talent in the industry, right? I mean, I'm personally very hot on that, right? I mean, a lot of our success, in fact, Chaka, comes from young, energetic people, right? I mean, they've helped us win pitches, they create great work, amazing energy on the floor. The whole Apollo 11 proposition, for example, is just made of very, very young people, right?
Yeah.
What would you, I mean, what would you tell them in today's times? Because at some stage, in some quarters, I mean, advertising perhaps not the first port of call. Maybe Google is, maybe Facebook is. In some case, it is. What to somebody young who's listening to our podcast, our conversation today, what would you tell them?
Well, one of the first thing I'd tell them is, can you please tell us where we're going wrong? I think that's one of the things that we talk. I mean, I'm not saying you and I personally or people in it. I think just generally, sometimes younger people can be talked at, which is rude, frankly. And the reason, it's not young people's fault that they're not coming into advertising. We're not doing something right. We're not appealing. And we need to understand why to be able to get better at that. And we don't have the answers because we're not young anymore, unfortunately.
So we need. You just burst my bubble.
Babe, I'm so sorry. I've just ruined your Tuesday. But we're not. I'm here to tell you we are no longer young, but it's fine because there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to learn two ways. So hopefully we've got some wisdom to impart, and by God, the young people have wisdom to impart that I want to learn from. So that would be my first question: is why, in the same way as I said personally, why the hell didn't I know about advertising? I didn't have a clue about it. Literally had no idea about it, and it was only through chance and as I progressed in my career and started knowing people who are in advertising, et cetera, that I started understanding, oh, there's this whole world out there that I genuinely didn't know about. I think you mentioned earlier, I don't think there's a better time to come into this industry right now in terms of the playground that you can make it. You can make whatever you want. Of course, people will still try and label. Everyone tries to label, that's a traditional agency, that's a digital agency, this is of course there are specialisms. I'm not negating that, but the understanding has to be far deeper within every single creative business. You know what I mean? We might not be a digital agency per se, but it's absolutely ridiculous to say we don't do digital work. I mean, what on earth? There is no, I don't even understand why there's that title anymore, because everything in the world is digital, so it's fucking pointless, frankly. So they can come and play kind of wherever they want to go. I still don't think we are great at being able to. I think you guys are doing a spectacular job in India with the scale-up clients that you've got, of doing different types of work where genuinely you can pull on different talent and different skill sets. And particularly when that comes to the young uns, people who wouldn't necessarily have come into advertising through a more conventional way, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I think we need to take some of those leads around the rest of the world as well, because I still think the entry points are still very limited and they're very narrow. So if someone has, I'm not saying sculpture, but a skill set, for example, a very specific skill set, I don't think that there is a connection or a correlation that they see with advertising, because they don't necessarily see that work either. So it's all a bit self-fulfilling. We've got to be making that work so that the kids are seeing it and they go, okay, well, who's making that? Where do I want to go? But I think we have to be better at creating those opportunities. But as you said, I genuinely think it is one of the most exciting times, because I think to join this industry, because I don't think it's a time where they're going to hear, oh, you can't do that. That's not what we do. Because if it's right for the brand, then we got to figure out how to do it. And if they need to lead that, fucking fantastic. Happy days. Teach us how to get better. Teach us how to do that.
Yeah, and that's also something, the reversal of the role of saying that you mentor us rather than we mentoring you. Yeah, that's the awesome piece of it.
So is this my opportunity now to be able to ask you some questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Chaka, yeah.
So I'm gonna go with whatever's in my head. Okay. So let's keep it loosey goosey and fluid. Okay. A bit of an obvious one to start with. What's the one thing from the pandemic that you have learned above all things, and one habit that you don't think you're going to get rid of?
I think the biggest learning, Chaka, obviously has been people, right? I mean, we've gone through shit, right? I mean, we've had all kinds of headwinds, right? But the way people have stood shoulder to shoulder, I don't think we had this organization 18 months back. We didn't. We weren't so close ever. And we have like 3 offices, Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi. You would have had to fly to a Delhi to meet people talk, worry about what's going on in Delhi or worry about what's going on in Bangalore. Now we meet them, all our leaders, 50 people, one phone call every Tuesday, 10:30. Everybody plugs in. I mean, that's the biggest thing I would say. It's just the boon in disguise of people coming together.
Love it. Okay, cool. Big question. This is like one of that's asked at the end of your life, but I'm going to ask it to you now. What are you most proud of in your life, your entire life? Doesn't have to do with work. This is a personal question as well.
Yeah, most proud of. Okay, I would say my 2 kids.
Of course, I'm glad. I needed to check. If all of a sudden you said a 30-second commercial, I was going to have to be worried.
The trick one, yeah. Yes, yeah, it's that. It's just, I mean, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, that's what you go back and you're like, all right, all's well with the world, no matter what goes on through the day. Yes.
What's the biggest thing that your kids have taught you?
So my elder one is now in grade 10, right? And his whole attitude in life, right? I was saying, Dad, don't worry, shit happens. It happens all the time. Right? I think that, right? I mean, he's just with these headphones and saying, don't worry, let me show you some memes. So I think
love it.
I think that
he sounds like a Zen master already. I hope he has a very calm. It sounds like he's gonna have a very calm adult life. Okay. What is a perspective on creativity that you have that you haven't ever shared with other people?
So I've been a strategist all my life, right? And for the longest time, I kind of yearned to belong, right? And I had one of my creative directors said, how can it be that it's my heart and it'll have your beat? It doesn't work like that, mate. So I've always struggled. And then I met a lot of partners. I met Sonal, I met Raj, who were so embracing, right? Who were like, everybody's creative. Let's thrash idea. Let's do it. There's no judgment on the table. And that transition is something that I loved in my midway through my career, where from a stage of wanting to get embraced to a stage of some people in my life coming and saying, everything's creative. Everybody's creative. Let's create together. I would say that view of creativity is so liberating. I mean, it does so much good.
I love that. And I think you've hit on a massively important point, which is particularly the partnership between creative and strategy. I mean, it is part of the same heartbeat. And the idea that they can be separated is absolutely nonsense. Okay, so what's the best piece of work that you've seen? And when I say work, by the way, it doesn't have to be advertising. What is the thing that has stimulated you the most creatively in the last 12 months?
It's a tough one.
It can be advertising.
I was going to say it's the McDonald's takeaway. No. Yeah. But it is. I mean, one of the latest work. I mean, is hot off the press and absolutely fantastic, Chaka. I mean, I'm really jealous of that piece of work. Absolutely jealous of saying, how about us not doing it? And I think the reason I like it is because it's not advertising. To your point. Right? It's not advertising. I don't see that advertising. I see that as part of your life. You're working, times are tough, and it just is there. It's not trying to intervene. It's not trying to force in, and that's the reason I like it.
I love it. Thank you, buddy. That's very, very kind. And last question: what would you want to say to your gang in India about the next 12 months? What you're excited about? And kind of the things to get hopeful and optimistic about.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we are in the inside pages of Fast Company. We want to be on the cover of Fast Company.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, look, come on. That's a pretty good ending, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chaka, for this conversation. Thank you for making time.
Thank you, buddy.
Loved
no
it.
problem.
Yes.
Take care. Bye.
Super. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.